I have talked extensively on this channel about why I dislike Nintendo Switch 2 game key cards. They are not my favorite thing on the planet. However, I've really sat and thought about this a whole lot, and I have 3 reasons that I think that game key cards maybe aren't all bad. Now, if you're unfamiliar with game key cards, I'm going to quickly go over it for you. Game key cards are physical cartridges that do not have the game on them. When you insert the game into the Nintendo Switch 2, it prompts a download that you then can download that game. It is a full digital download. There is nothing on the cartridge, but the cartridge is still required of you to play the game. So after you download it, you still have to put that cartridge into your system in order to play it. And I've said in the past regarding the key cards that I'm not a fan of this personally. If I want a physical game, I want it fully on the cartridge. I don't want an empty cartridge sitting on my shelf. So I've been sitting out on game key cards. However, again, I thought about some reasons that I actually think they're not as bad as everyone is making them out to be. Number 1 reason, let's get into it. Number 1, you can resell them. Now, I know this still bugs a lot of people. I'm not someone who has bought a single game key card yet. However, the fact that you can resell these is a good thing. It still gives you a physical option. If you're someone who likes to resell games to then buy new games, game key cards are good in that regard. I know plenty of people, especially myself when I was a kid, I would constantly go, I would buy a game, I would play through said game, and then I would trade that game in to buy a new game. Game key cards still allow this functionality, despite the fact that the game is not actually on the cartridge. It still allows people to go and resell them, give them to a friend to share, do whatever you want to do with that particular game, but you just don't have it fully on the cartridge. And I think this is still a good thing. I still think it's good that you can resell a game key card. It makes a lot of sense in that regard. However, the next couple things are much larger than the fact that I can just resell the cartridge. The next 2 reasons that I think they're not all bad is something a little more personal, as far as certain games that I enjoy playing that I don't necessarily care about having a physical copy for. The second reason I think that game key cards aren't as bad as everyone lets on is because I think they make sense for yearly releases. Now, let me say, not all yearly releases, not stuff like Call of Duty or things of that nature. I think they make sense for specific games like sports titles. I'm a big fan of Madden, college football, WWE 2K. All those games are annual releases. And the thing about those annual releases is that I personally have no real interest in keeping my hands on the previous version of those games. I have no desire to go back and play an old Madden or an old college football or an old WWE 2K. It just doesn't matter to me. I want to play the newest version of that particular game. And with new games coming out like Madden 26 on the Nintendo Switch 2, it is a game key card, which I personally am a fan of. Now, the reason I say that I'm a fan of Madden being a key card on the Nintendo Switch 2 is because there are certain games like WWE 2K that are releasing a physical copy, but there's nothing in there. There's not even a game key card. It's a code in a box. I would rather every company that is putting out these stupid codes in a box just put it on a freaking key card. Just put it on a freaking key card. I would rather have that for these games than a code in a box. It just makes more sense. Now, like I said, I don't care about saving that physical game. Like, it's not like I'm going to have a copy of Madden. Say this is Madden. I'm not going to have a copy of Madden from 5 years ago sitting on my shelf. It doesn't matter to me. I want to play the new version. Now, the reason I'm okay with this being a game key card is because of the fact that because I don't want to keep the game, I have no interest in having it as a physical game fully on the cartridge. I don't need that because I'm not going to keep it. It's not like something I'm trying to preserve like a lot of these other games that I buy physically. It's not a game that I want to hold on to forever like Shadow Labyrinth here. That's not what I'm looking for out of the sports games. What I like about them being a game key card is the fact that I can take that game after the new one comes out and I could go and trade that game in to get myself the new version of whatever game that is, whether it be WWE 2K or be Madden, assuming, WWE learns the ways and they just put it on a freaking key card in the future. I could take that game, trade it in, and then get me the newest version of that game, save myself a little bit of money. And that goes back into the first topic, which was resale. That is something that I really like about this particular circumstance. I like that because I have no interest in preserving my sports games. There's always going to be a new one. There's always going to be a better one. I'm just going to trade in the key card and get myself the newest version with a little bit of money back in my pocket. So I like that aspect of key cards for the Nintendo Switch 2. This is the one instance where I'm like, yeah, I'm actually going to buy a game key card. I actually pre-ordered Madden for the Nintendo Switch 2 as a game key card physical version. I think it makes sense for those particular games. And let me know in the comments below if you disagree with me. I could definitely understand you still not supporting that. But for these particular games, it just makes sense to me. Also because of the fact that sports titles don't gain a whole lot of value. After the new one comes out, they kind of depreciate. So holding on to them doesn't really do me a whole lot of favors. I would rather just get the money up front for the new version by trading in my key card and being able to play the new version. So for me personally, this makes sense. This is something that I actually like the key card situation for. Now, the third and final reason that I don't mind game key cards, and they're not all bad, is because there are going to be certain games on the Nintendo Switch 2 that will benefit from being on a game key card. There is no way that certain games that are going to be coming out will actually fit on a 64GB cartridge. And I will say that this is a bit of speculation because we don't know this for certain. We don't know if the developers are going to be able to be wizards and shrink those games down enough to actually fit on a 64GB cartridge. But I would imagine that certain games that are coming to the system will not be able to do this. Now, what games am I talking about? The games mainly that I'm talking about are those really big titles, specifically looking at games like Call of Duty. Call of Duty, we know, is coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 at some point. We don't know when, but we know that a contract was signed between Nintendo and Microsoft to bring Call of Duty over to the Nintendo Switch 2 for 10 years. Not even just the Nintendo Switch 2, the contract was originally signed for Nintendo platforms in general. But we know that it's going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 because that is the new hardware. So we don't know when it's actually coming, we just know it is coming. The thing about Call of Duty is that Call of Duty is a massive game no matter what platform you're playing it on. Typically it is over 100 gigabytes. And in a lot of instances, it's like it pushes like 150, 200, whatever. It takes up a ton of freaking storage. My point is, because it takes up a ton of freaking storage, it is never going to be able to fit entirely onto a game cartridge. It's just not going to happen. There's a 64GB cartridge, and Call of Duty is not going to fully fit on that cartridge. So in that instance, I don't really need a cartridge in general. I just, if you only are going to be able to download the game to begin with, I'm fine with buying Call of Duty physical as a game key card. For me personally, that just makes sense because the game isn't going to fit on the cartridges available. So throw it on a key card so I can still throw something on my shelf. In that instance, I would buy a game key card over buying a normal, digital download for certain games. That just makes sense to me because I still want that game on my shelf, but because of the fact it's so large, I can forgive it's on a game key card. That just makes sense in my head because, like I said, it's just a big release. Now, I will say there is a little bit of a caveat to this. What I would like to see out of Call of Duty on the Switch is that it is partly on the cartridge. Partly on the cartridge because of the fact that there is things like campaign and zombies and things of that nature. I would really like if at bare minimum they get the campaign on a cartridge and you have to download the rest of the game. But even if they could get the campaign and zombies on there, and then you have to download multiplayer, that would be super, super nice. But again, all in all, what I really care about actually having long term is the campaign. So that's kind of the route I would like them to go with Call of Duty, is get the campaign on the cartridge and then download the rest of the game. So at least at bare minimum, you could play the campaign forever. That is kind of where my head is at. But like I said earlier, if it is just on a game key card, I would still buy a physical version of Call of Duty on a game key card. That is just my thought. For other games that are smaller, games that don't need that tons and tons of space on your system, I'm not buying game key cards for. That's just the way it is. I'll buy it digitally or I won't buy it at all. That's kind of where I'm at. But for the particular games that I talked about, yearly sports titles, games as big as Call of Duty, I'm kind of okay with game key cards. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below, because this is kind of a hot topic and one that still we see a lot of people debating online. We're even seeing some companies changed their stance. Looking at Sega specifically, they announced originally that Sonic Crossworlds was going to be a game key card, and then they changed course. They actually said that the physical version for the Switch 2 is going to come later, early next year, after the digital release of the game, and it will be fully on a 64GB cartridge. So we're even seeing some companies move away from using game key cards, because every Sega release so far on the Switch 2 has been a key card. And I personally was someone who wasn't all that interested in Sonic Crossworlds, but now I'm going to buy Sonic Crossworlds because it is fully on the cartridge. So I like to see that things are shifting back toward being on the cartridge. I think the sales have kind of indicated to a lot of developers that people just aren't interested in key cards, but it's very interesting to see how this has all progressed forward. So like I said, that is going to be it for this particular video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below, like I said earlier, your thoughts on my takes regarding the key cards in this particular video. Also, let me know what you think about Sonic Crossworlds switching over to a full game on the cartridge. Very, very cool stuff. But leave a like, comment, subscribe. It helps me out, helps the video out, and helps the channel out immensely. But until next time, peace.